Welcome to the Action Campaign's video series explaining the legislative provisions in the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act of 2023, commonly called the AHCIA. In this video, Ariane and I will discuss sections 202 and 303 of the bill, both of which could improve our ability to preserve affordable housing using the housing credit. Ariane, not only is the housing credit our nation's most important tool for building affordable housing, but it's also the primary resource for preserving and recapitalizing existing affordable housing in which the American taxpayer has already invested. How would the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act help with preservation?
Thanks for that question, Jennifer. Preserving existing affordable housing, including properties originally financed by HUD, or the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Housing Service, as well as recapitalizing older housing credit developments, can often be more cost-effective than building a new property from scratch. The Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act helps preserve our nation's affordable housing stock in several ways. As we've discussed in other videos, providing additional housing credit resources through the cap increase and basis boosts, and ensuring adequate bond resources by lowering the 50% test are critical to preservation. But there are also a couple of programmatic changes included in the bill that would specifically make preservation more feasible.
Okay, what are those changes and how would they impact the program?
The first programmatic change is in section 202 of the bill. Let's take, for example, a property that was built decades ago with HUD or USDA resources, which needs rehab work to be preserved. The housing credit is a great tool to use for the rehabilitation. And by using the credit, we can ensure that the property remains affordable for at least 30 years. However, when the housing credit is used to recapitalize a property like this, all existing tenants must have their incomes recertified to ensure that they remain eligible under the housing credit income limits.
But what happens if a tenant's income has gone up and they aren't eligible under the housing credit income requirements?
That's the problem. If a tenant isn't eligible under the housing credit, the tenant either needs to move or the developer won't be able to use the housing credits associated with that tenant's unit. That could mean that they won't have enough housing credit authority to make the rehabilitation feasible.
So how does the AHCIA help?
The AHCIA would allow existing tenants to be considered low income for purposes of determining eligible basis if the tenant met the housing credit income requirement upon initial occupancy, as long as their income has not risen above 120% of the current area median income. This eliminates the tension between allowing existing tenants to stay in their homes and recapitalizing affordable properties.
That makes sense. What's the other preservation provision you had mentioned?
This one is in section 303 of the bill. Currently, when an occupied building is rehabilitated, it is often safer, more expedient, and more efficient if the tenants are relocated while the work is being done. However, the IRS has taken the position that the cost of relocating tenants is deductible. That means a developer can't include those costs in eligible basis for the housing credit, so the housing credit equity can't be used to pay for those costs. It may mean that tenants need to stay in place during the rehab work if that's not possible.
I can see how that would make rehabilitation more difficult and time-consuming, probably adding to costs and sacrificing resident safety.
Yeah, in some instances, it makes doing the rehabilitation impossible.
So how does the bill address this?
AHCIA would allow tenant relocation costs incurred in connection with a rehabilitation to be capitalized as part of the cost of the rehabilitation.
Are there any other provisions that help with preservation?
There are, but we can address the 10-year rule and related party rule in another video in the series.
Thanks, Ariane. For more of our video series, visit the Action Campaign's website at rentalhousingaction.org.